My name is Daniel Branco. I'm a neurologist and neuroscientist who has spent a lifetime pursuing a deeper understanding of consciousness. And this is a conversation about high consciousness. And today's topic is your enemy is always a version of yourself. I know this will cause immediate resistance in many of you. But this is such an important idea to understand and to incorporate in your life. And why is it important? Well, it only becomes important if you're interested in having more peace than conflict in your life. And if you are interested in getting to the same or better results, overcoming the enemy using the least amount of energy. And it is important to master this understanding because there's always going to be people in the way of the things you want. Always. It is practically inevitable and proportional. The more you want something, the more it seems like there is a force pushing against your will. And very commonly, that force is expressed in the form of other people. And then you have to make a decision. You can either react with a stronger counteracting force to overcome their resistance at whatever cost it takes, and creating an enemy or opponent along the way, or you can decide to dissolve the resistance in the first place by simply getting the resistance out of your way. No enemies necessary. But how do you do that? How do you dissolve resistance? Well, for many years in my life, I was an entrepreneur. I'll devise solutions that were so obviously necessary. Everybody should welcome them. Yet, I've always faced incredible resistance because people are naturally resistant to change, even if the change is in their own interest. But this is the topic for another video. The important thing here in this video is to realize that resistance is just the nature of the physical world. The physical world is less plastic and less malleable than the world of our thoughts and ideas. In other words, than the world of consciousness. The problem is that when you turn a person, which has become the personification of the world's resistance in your life, and you turn them into your enemy, you're only expanding resistance in your own experienced reality. All of a sudden, that which you should be trying to avoid, which is resistance in the form of an enemy, becomes your focal point of attention. And by focusing your attention to it, it grows in relevance. Your enemy grows in relevance and in presence in your life. Ultimately, your enemy is always your own creation, the result of where you put your energy. Think about it. If you need to imprint focus and energy to achieve anything in your life, a title, a company, a venture that you're building, and to make it succeed and make it happen in your reality, if that requires so much focus and energy, how come focusing your energy and attention on your enemy would not create exactly the same outcome, the same success, so to speak, in creating that reality for yourself? The more energy and dedication you put into resistance or into your enemy, the greater that enemy shows in your perceived reality. And there's more. Just like your life, your projects, your company are your creations. And in that sense, an offspring and a version of you, the same is true of your enemies. Your enemies are always a version of you. Have you ever met anyone whose enemy is with fish? Oh my God, I hate that fish. have you have you ever heard that? Probably not, because for you to have an enemy, the enemy has to relate to you. In other words, to some extent, you and your enemy are both coming from the same place. Maybe you can find someone whose enemy is with a horse. I know it might be a stretch to think of someone who has a horse as enemy. But in principle, because horses are more relatable to humans than fish, you can at least imagine someone who hates a horse. Oh my God, that horse doesn't obey me. I'll tame it and I'll discipline it. In life, most people wouldn't take a horse as an enemy, though, or a dog, which is even more relatable to humans. Because if you see someone who really dislikes a horse or a dog, most likely that person is probably out of touch with a whole lot of other things in their life. Because those feelings are only ours. And it is up to, I mean, the feelings of hating someone or creating an enemy or feeling that antagonism within us. They're only ours. And it is up to us, therefore, it is up to us alone to allow those feelings or not in our perceived reality. So the same is equally true of other people. Just like you wouldn't be enemies with a dog because you know who you are, right? You know you're not a dog. You know you're better than that. And the same is true of people. If you know who you are and you know your power, you wouldn't waste your time and energy cultivating enemies, opponents. Or to put it broadly, you wouldn't waste your time empowering resistance. Because making an enemy is no different than empowering another person to act against you. When you create an enemy, you are essentially communicating that you both are on the same level. We don't become enemies with ants because humans are not on the same level as ants. We only become enemies with those that are on the same level as us. And that's exactly what makes your enemy a version of you because you both are on the same level. To some extent, you are one and the same. For most people, as soon as someone steps in their way, they may start seeing them as the enemy. It doesn't take much. If you are politically polarized, for example, you quickly become enemies with the president or perhaps half the entire country who voted for them. It's so easy to find ourselves in a place of antagonism. Avid sports supporters can and do many times see the supporters of the adversary team as enemies. Some kinds of rivalry can even be fun in sports, but sometimes people take them very, very seriously. Opponents can also appear in professional settings, in the office, or anywhere along your career. Could be your boss, could be the company board if you are the CEO. Essentially, anyone threatening to take from you something you want to obtain or preserve is going to be seen as an antagonist, as an enemy. If you have an antagonist, most likely it is because you both want the very same thing. You are of the same nature. You both want control, and you both believe that you can only achieve what you aspire by overcoming the other side, by overcoming your opponent. Essentially, you both are one and the same. That is true at the level of individuals, and it is also true at the level of countries. Opponent countries are on the same level and want pretty much the same thing. There are no good and bad sides or good and bad countries. That's just the narrative. What there is only resistance and competition for predominance. And that's when it gets embarrassing. It is embarrassing that to notice that when we're fighting wars, or when we're actually fighting the competition, or when we're fighting wars between countries, or we're fighting the competition in the business setting, for example, all we are essentially doing is fighting ourselves. There is no fundamental difference between you and the enemy. You're just at two different extremes of the same duality, a duality that brings you together in experienced reality and makes you one and the same, you and your enemy, you and the competitor. Because if you were of different nature, of a different energy, they wouldn't even exist as enemies in your conscious reality, in your experienced reality. Just like nobody perceives fish or ants as enemies. It does. The same is. It just doesn't make sense to experience fish and ants as enemies, because that doesn't belong in our reality. Because that polarization isn't you. It isn't part of who you are. But the polarization with your enemy, if you have one, that that is you. Your enemy becomes you. The whole time, it's always been you. Your greatest opponent has always been yourself. So, how do you dissolve resistance and deconstruct your enemy and remove them from your experience reality altogether? Well, I already gave the first clue. If your antagonist is just you, remembering that is the very first step. And if the enemy is you, the second natural and logical step is to just love them, just as you would love yourself. You don't need to fight and waste your energy. Or you might fight them because for some reason you need to fight yourself. But know that all the way you're gonna be fighting yourself. There's no difference. If you found an enemy in someone else, that person, that country, that company that is opposing you is just a version of you. Whenever you find resistance in a person, just don't make an enemy out of them. Observe and understand why they trigger you. Use that as an opportunity to grow in self knowledge, because your enemy is only there to show you that you are out of balance with yourself and that there's something you can do about it, not by attacking them, but by looking inside. Because those who are in balance have no need for antagonism in their lives. Do not try and insist in overcoming your opponent. First, because your opponent is actually you, but also because it requires much less energy to simply dissolve and get them out of your way, out of your perceived reality, than it does to antagonize them and fight them. Even if you manage to overcome and break your enemy, that juice is not worth the squeeze. Besides, just like your enemy was always a version of yourself, the enemy you defeated, if you accomplish so, is also you. You are defeating yourself. For the high consciousness philosophy, the way to go is by embracing radical responsibility, which includes embracing the idea that everything in your life is of your own creation. Everything. If you created the enemy or allow them in your reality, you can just as well deconstruct them and remove them from your experienced reality entirely if you want. You just have to make the decision. And even if that's a person you cannot realistically remove from your life for any reason, you can still remove any negative interpretations or experiences coming from that person's presence in your life. You have the power to re-signify anything and any person participating in your conscious reality. And I know many people will disagree with this video at prima facie without giving it a second thought, because our antagonists or opponents or enemies are usually the last people in the world would see as having any resemblance to us. Yet, I still say, your adversary is always a version of yourself. I could go even further. Your adversary is always your own creation. And the good news is, if you created it, you can replace the creation with something better, more uplifting and more expanding. Do you agree or disagree with this idea? Please leave your opinions in the comments, and I'll love to read them and respond to them, or even create new videos to address the points you raise in the comments. And if you like this subject and would want to be better prepared to debate these and other videos in this channel, check out my book, Spirit Duality, Spiritual Initiation for Rational People. And if you'd like to keep exploring these ideas and watching more videos on them, please give us a like and subscribe and hit the bell, all of that good stuff. We are a very young channel and your support is much appreciated. Let's improve the experience of life for everyone on this planet. See you next time.